Hi guys, for those that have come in, we're going to start in about a minute. Just please copy down the focus question and what's in red on the board, and I'll be with you guys shortly. Okay, guys, so let's get started today. All right, so the focus question is, how did people live in the crowded cities before skyscrapers and large buildings? So a huge focus for today we really want to take a focus on is we have a large groups of people moving to the urban city. Okay, we remember this from industrialization. We called it urbanization. We had a lot of immigrants coming into the city. We had a lot of former farmers deciding to want a new job, deciding to work in the factories, and they are going to come into um, the cities. Now, in like 1870, 1880, okay, they didn't have skyscrapers, they didn't have large buildings. Okay, they weren't created and built until like the early 1900s. So how do we fit in so many large amount of people in such a small area? Okay, so we started to, and I'm going to establish the problem here. There were major problems in the city with overcrowding. We had a lot of people in a small area. Now this is consistent today. Okay, this is consistent today. Um, but overall, we have larger buildings. Okay, some of you may live in an apartment that might be 5 stories, 6 stories high, and you guys are on the top floor, and there's a lot more room because the buildings go up higher. Back in American history, back in the cities, they didn't really have this. Okay, so in the chat, if you can, before today, has anyone ever heard of a tenement? Just write yes or no if you've ever heard of a tenement, because I'm just curious. Before today, have you ever heard of a tenement? Okay, I got a no from Jason. During the Great Depression? Nah, not quite, Jaden. They wouldn't be around during the Great Depression. You might have heard of a Hooverville. Jerry L, no. Nina, no. Okay. So the reason most of you have never heard of a tenement is because tenements no longer exist. Okay. Why? Because they were so incredibly horrible to live in that even poor people today shouldn't be subjected to living in these particular buildings. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some photos of what a tenement was. Now, we're going to look at who took these photos and where these photos came from towards the end of the period. But for now, let's just take a look at what the inside of some of these tenements look like. Okay, let's start with the first photo, which is probably one of the most famous photos we've ever seen from tenements, which is this. Okay, so everyone just take 20 seconds, 30 seconds. In the chat, write some things that you notice about this photo or what questions you have. So if you see something you find interesting and you want to write it, if you want to ask a question, but I want to hear from 3 different people on what this photograph, what are some things you notice, what are some things you wonder, or what are some questions you have? One question, okay. Kind of looks like a dorm because of its size almost. Okay, so have you ever seen a college dorm? Okay, kind of looks like that. It's a closed area instead of a big open space. Yep, looks like a very small room. It's messy. A lot of people living in one room. It was the little bunkers, and it was very small. It's small. They also look like they're starving. Okay, so good. We got a couple things here. It does look like a dorm room. Okay, if you've ever seen a college dorm room, it looks like a very, very small room. You may be in a very small room right now at your house, okay, a very small area. Here's the thing. I guarantee only 1 or 2 people are living in your room right now, okay? Let's look at these particular people. Let's see how many people we can count. I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4, I see 5, I see 6, and there's even a 7th towards the back. You can kind of see his legs a little bit. Okay, laying down on the bed. His face is kind of covered up right here. So we have 7 total people living in this small area. I know it's in black and white, but you could probably tell a little bit. Not only is it messy, it's also very dirty. Okay, here's some dirt on the walls here. It's not a very good area. And everyone's covered in blankets. Okay, and if you look closely at some of these people, these are some immigrants as well. Okay, I think you have some Italian immigrants at the top here. I think you have an Hispanic immigrant here. It's a very different type of area. Okay, so you have a cold, messy, tight room. Okay, this was known as a tenement room. You see 7 different people living in one room. And some of these people are different families. Okay, they're not the same family. They're from different areas. They're different countries. And they are all living together. All right, so picture being in your room right now, but sharing it with 6 or 7 other people. And those 6 or 7 other people, you don't even know that well. They're not your family. Okay, it's kind of crazy. All right, the people that moved to cities, the people that were poor, okay, had to live in these tenements, and these buildings were constructed in a way that basically they crammed all of these people into these small areas. And yes, people had to pay rent. This wasn't free. This wasn't like a shelter, so to speak. This was a place you had to pay for. Why? Because if you wanted a job in the city, you had to live in this area. All right. So this is a very sad photograph to show you how people lived. Here's another good picture. All right. This room's a little bit bigger, but the bigger the room, the more people you have. This doesn't even look like a room, guys. Okay. Doesn't even look like a room. Yeah, Justin, I feel claustrophobic. Okay. Count how many people are in this room. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This doesn't even look like a room. Okay? This just looks like a place where there's multiple people. Okay? Within this particular room right here. And you can tell they're not sleeping on beds. Some of them are sleeping on newspaper. There's a furnace here, which I guess keeps it kind of warm. But you can see it's very dirty. You can see the bottom of these guys' feet is very dirty. All right, so when you have a lot of people living in enclosed areas, very cold, okay, a lot of people living together, a lot of disease starts to spread. And a lot of people got very sick. There aren't even beds. People are sleeping on wooden planks. Okay, and again, this isn't a shelter. People would pay money to go to live here. Just kind of crazy. Yeah, and this one might be a little too hot because these guys aren't wearing blankets. These guys are sleeping with no blankets. I mean, you guys have slept at home at night. Sometimes it gets a little hot. You take the covers off. Okay, all these people here are sleeping without covers on. So it obviously got very, very hot. Okay, I'm a cold sleeper too. Don't get me wrong. I open up all the windows, but these people here don't have much of a choice. You're right next to a furnace. And besides that, just forget all that. It's very dangerous. Who wants to sleep next to a furnace? All right. So these are how tenements looked. You often have, you say, I saw someone in the chat say, hey, maybe it'd be better if just people stayed outside. And, I guess that could be the case. People stay outside. Okay. But look at these little kids here. Okay. Cuddling up for warmth. Okay. No shoes. Okay. Very, very crappy situations. A lot of kids were forced to stay outside pretty much the entire day because there wasn't enough room inside. Like, some of us take for granted, you have your own room, you have your own space, you can do your own thing when you're home. Things like the pandemic may not be as bad because we have all that technology, but if you're living in a tenement, there's no room. So they force the kids to stay outside. Okay. So that's the front door of someone's home, like the basement. Yeah, this is probably like where the kids hang out outside. Okay. So many people had moved to the cities, and many of the people that moved to the cities, okay, needed places to live, and they started living in these tenements, and it just wasn't good. Okay. If you were a poor person, you were most likely living in a tenement. Hell, you could be a middle-class person, someone who makes a good amount of money, but didn't have a great place to live. You could live in these places as well. All right. And the last photo I'll show you is this. This is a tenement block house. Notice how they don't go that high. They're only a story or two high. Okay. Notice how they're like these blocks of houses. There's no space separating the two. Very, very little space. And they're just blocks of houses that don't go up very high, that basically cram together all these people. Everything is tight in the cities. All right. So even though the cities are offering the factory jobs and offering good opportunities for immigrants and offering better life for farmers, people had to put up with these kind of tough housing conditions. All right. So we're looking at the progressive era today, right? So we want to see how we improved on these tenements and made sure things like this will never happen again. Okay. So how are we going to do this? All right. What we're going to look at is the end of the video. Okay. Sorry, we're not going to look at the end of the video. I got my mind lost there. We're going to look at a web quest. Yeah, videos tomorrow. We're going to look at a web quest that has been shared with you. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear. Even if you're done early, no one should be going anywhere, because at 12:32, okay, we are going to come back together and finish up the lesson. So the last 5 minutes of class, you guys got to come back and stay with me here. All right. So if you open up the web quest here, you see Tenements web quest. All right. What you're going to do is you're going to click on the link, okay, which is the history.com link. I'll just open it up, make sure it opens up to the right spot. It should. Making sure. Excellent. Okay. So what you'll notice is it's a reading with questions, but I break down and go over exactly what each thing is. So you'll see a paragraph on the introduction. Okay, you're going to answer the 2 questions there. Then you'll see a section that says the rise of tenement housing. You have to answer the questions there. It will look something like this. The rise of tenement housing. Okay, you're going to answer the questions from there. Then it goes on to, calls for reform. Okay, you scroll down to calls for reform and you answer the question. So if you can finish in the next 20 minutes, that is great. Okay, but if you can't, it's not a big deal as well. Okay, you'll have a little bit of time later to finish it up. But at 12:32, everyone take a look at your watch or set a timer. At 12:32, we're coming back together and we got to finish one more slide of notes to wrap up this assignment, because now you're going to look at how we fix the problems of tenements and how they change for the better throughout the progressive era. All right, so I'll mute myself so you guys can work on this right now and come back together at 12:32.